when you and I first talked, one of the big doubts about crowdfunding was how is it going to fare during a recession? So 2018 seems to suggest to me that crowdfunding is actually not just recession resilient, but actually, and I'm not sure exactly what term to use, I want to come up with something better, but recession beneficial, actually thrives during a recession. So let's talk about 2020. Oh my goodness, fresh in everybody's minds. What did you see? What was your experience? Just coming into end of 19, coming into 2020, and then boom, in March, lockdowns. What happened?
Yeah, so as we came into 20, we were actually, and I think a lot of people, if we remember back to kind of pre-March, even pre-January, I think people were, when we look at real estate, we knew that certain markets were getting pretty heated up, right? Prices had gone up significantly. There was a lot of conversation about a coming recession and softness in some of the real estate market. So I think we were already, as a company, been preparing for what happens in that recession. What do we need to do? And the beauty of an online marketplace is you can pivot very quickly, right? You're not entrenched in one asset type or one way of doing things. So we knew that we actually saw that the coming recession could actually be something that helps benefit in a way and demonstrate the power of a marketplace. What we couldn't predict is that there'd be a global pandemic coming, right? Nobody could kind of see that coming, nor the impact. And I think what it did is it was a shock to the system, right? We saw the Dow drop by 10,000 points overnight. Investors were in a state of, kind of anxiety, right? Not just from an investment, but just from a personal perspective, right? Everybody was in the same boat, from March and April, right? And trying to figure out which way is up. And so what we saw at CrowdStreet was, number one, investor uncertainty and anxiety. And that's a time when, if you're a leader in a market, you have to step up and say, hey, how do we bring some kind of certainty or at least something to these investors that makes them understand what might be going on around this industry and the world? So we actually doubled down on kind of our content and we went and got industry experts to come and be on live streams. We had a 5x increase in the number of registrations for our live stream than we'd had before the pandemic. People they wanted to hear knowledge and information, right? And that didn't mean that we gave them the crystal ball, but we at least gave them, information about what was going on. So Jack Chandler, who was the ex-head of BlackRock, right, joined us. Head of research from Nuveen joined us, right? We weren't trying to sell anything. We're just trying to share kind of what was going on in the market, what we expected to potentially happen in the coming months. That was one thing we did. Second, we had to right away, as a marketplace, determine that there were deals that were going to go live that the sponsor said, I need to re-underwrite my deal. It might not make sense. So we saw transaction volume for 6 weeks go down pretty, we had to put the pause button on a lot of that. But what our investments and capital markets teams were able to do, Dr. Gower, was very quickly taking a lot of research, taking a lot of information in from industry experts, as well as an eye to what might be happening in the months ahead, and say, okay, what asset types will actually do well through this recession and this pandemic, which ones won't? And so how could we pivot to things like more industrial, more data center, obviously e-commerce, boomed in a matter of months from what it was going to take many more years to get to that level of e-commerce. Other asset types that could benefit, like medical office buildings and things like that. So we also saw, because in a freeze situation like that, many of those institutional capital providers, they froze, right? They said, hey, we have to look at our portfolio. We are going to hit the pause button. I mean, they are, again, they're professional money managers, and I understand the world they live in, and rightfully so, they have to say, we need to shore up our portfolio. Well, when you've got great sponsors and great deals out there, that then suddenly the access to that capital dried up, it was a forcing function for many of them to say, we've been researching this crowdfunding online market for the last 2 years. Maybe now's the time we actually try it. right? Because it could be a very viable alternative to institutional capital. So our business actually expanded in 2020. It had a hiccup there for 6 to 8 weeks, without a doubt. Everybody did, right? But then we saw coming out in June and July, we saw an expansion, and Q4 was the largest quarter we've ever seen at CrowdStreet.